All right, so 2019 is coming. I'm hoping that it will be sooner than later. It's in 2.5, so I'm hoping they don't go to 2.9 and then 3.0 and then release. Last release they went to CPP3 and then released. So I'm hoping they just cut the chase and go 3 after 2.5. We'll see. They vowed that they will not release it before it's ready. So if
That's good.
If it's October, it's October. The last release was June, and then we don't count 2017 because it was an out-of-band release just for Linux, so I'm not going to count that one. But for 2016, they released it in June. June's next month. I'm not sure they're going to cut that fast. And they might. I don't think so. But
what about Ignite? Do you think they'll just do it at Ignite?
That's where they like to do it at conferences. I was praying for Build, but it didn't get announced in Build, so I lost Build. So the only next one is Ignite. So I'm hoping that they don't wait that long. But if they do, great, because it'll be done and baked. So I'm praying for baked. I just want it to be solid when it comes out the door. And if it's October, great. It will be in 2019. They swore it would be in 2019 because they're not interested in changing the name. So we'll see what features get cut when they go to release. Who knows? I never. But there's going to be a few different, maybe. It's not acting nice. Let's see if it works. If not, I'll just use the keyboard. I guess I can't use that. I will try one more just to see if I can. I don't want to sit and move with my hand. I'm not that happy about that. So we'll see if this works.
Try clicking on the screen once with the mouse to put the focus in on the presentation.
Let's do that. I'm challenged. Sorry about that. I'm good. I'm challenged. I just didn't click on the screen. So it was focused on the GoToMeeting thing, and if that doesn't get controlled by the mouse clicker. Okay. So this is the agenda. It looks kind of small, but there's a lot of data, a lot of content in here. So hopefully we'll get through it in the time. We should get through it in the hour and a half. So we're going to start with features. Big data clusters. Those of you who haven't heard about that, that's the new big thing that they're putting into 2019 that's kind of involved. I'm not sure, when we went to the industry summit, we weren't really told whether this would be a hold-up or one that holds up the release, or if they would out-of-band it afterwards. So I don't know if they're just waiting for this to be baked. But those of you who don't know what that is, they're basically implementing Kubernetes and Docker containers and stuff all as part of this big data solution. The one thing we don't know is what it's going to cost you to run it, because it's infrastructure. So I'm not sure what the licensing will be because it's across multiple machines. So I'm not sure what that is, but it'll be a Kubernetes cluster that will be able to be used with HBase and all that stuff. And there's just tons of stuff that's going to go into it. If you want to know what it is, I did grab a graphic. There's a big graphic out on the web. If you do SQL 2019 big data clusters, it will show you a graphic of how it's laid out. But it's basically Kubernetes on steroids inside the SQL Server engine control. So that's what it is. This would be cool. I don't know how many. I don't know of any use in iWorld to use it, but Kubernetes is the buzzword. So we're going to see what happens. The other thing that's coming is right now we have database scope configurations. Those of you who are familiar with it means that each database, like MaxDoc, could be configured at the database level. Parameter sniffing can be configured at the database level. The accepting of the optimizer changes can be accepted at the database level. So there's plenty of things that are missing. There's 4 that exist today in 2016 and 2017. There's going to be 17 more that are added to this, and I'll show you that in the SQL engine that we'll show in the demo. There's not a ton of demos, but there's a couple just to show you some of the things that are coming. But 17 database scope configurations just add to the 4 and give you more granular control at a database level of what you can do. Some of these will be part of what I talk about in a little bit. about some features coming, so they'll control those features. So that's kind of cool. Those of you know, anybody use DBCC in and page at any time in your life, ever? Yeah? So that is, those were undocumented and unsupported, although there's plenty of community documentation of how to use them and use for them, but they are now going to be supported through DMS. So there's a sysdm db page info that you can pass a page ID in, and it will tell you information about that page, rather than using DBCC in to find out what index there are, and then to find out the ID, and then to take that page ID, put it in DBCC page, and see the page. This is now supported and documented under DB page info, so that'll be fun. If you only have a resource ID through your DMVs of looking at resource IDs, you can actually use the sysfm page res cracker. That will, you pass a resource ID in it, and it will tell you what page that resource has. So that's another cool thing, documented again, where before you had to use this percent stupid little page thingy, and you could get your resource that way. Now it's a full-blown documented function that you can use to find out what pages are in your resource. So that's kind of cool. The SP estimate data compression, anybody use that? Estimate compression settings or savings? It's a stored procedure that was introduced in 2014, I believe, that let you pass a table into here and say, what savings would I get if I compress this table? Row, page, and this will tell you an estimate of what you would gain based on the type of data in the columns. This was not available when column store came about. So now they've added this feature, an extension of this feature inside 2019 to give you compression savings, allowing you to know column store compression savings and column store archive compression savings as well. So that's kind of a cool little feature. Not new, but definitely augmented. Security. So anybody used Always Encrypted? So Always Encrypted has existed since 2016, and it gives you the ability to encrypt a column and have the keys not be accessible to the DBA. That was the point, is that you had the security certificate on the web server, and the driver of ADO.net you would specify that you were going to use Always Encrypted in the connection screen, and it would encrypt it on the web server and send the encrypted bits to the database. The DBA would say select from table and see stuff. Let's see the data. So unless that DBA had access to the security certificate on his workstation, he could not decrypt it. But if he did, then Management Studio would let him connect with a parameter on his connection screen, and he could look at the data just like normal. It also gave you the ability to use two types of encryption. One is randomized, which means that you could encrypt Ben and encrypt Ben, and they would not be the same value in the database. They would look different. And so you couldn't necessarily say where name equals Ben because it was randomized. So how would you know? And so they had a deterministic encryption on Always Encrypted that let you say deterministic, and then you could put an index on it, and you could do where name equals Ben, decrypt it, and then, or encrypt your value, search in the database and say, oh, we're good, and that's cool. So the new feature is Always Encrypted with Secure Enclaves. Anybody know about that? So Secure Enclaves is using hardware technology to create a little piece in memory that is secure. The engine controls it. You don't get to see it. You can never know what the encryption is and what it is unless you have access to the permissions to decrypt it with the enclave. So this piece gives us now the ability, at least in this feature, to now not care whether it's randomized or deterministic, and you can do searches across and index across even randomized encryption on the column. So that's kind of cool because the enclave is where it's decrypted. So that data is never decrypted and sent on the wire. It is always decrypted and encrypted in the enclave, and you either get the result or you don't. And that's how it works. So it's all using hypervisor / memory trickery stuff to create the secure place.
So we didn't use it because we used user-defined data types, and apparently that's not supported.
Right now, right.
Yeah, is that still the case?
I don't know. We can look in just at the end of the presentation. I have the new release notes.
Oh.
So I wanted to make sure that we looked at those and made sure that anything I didn't get in here that we know about is on there. We'll see if it is. I mean, that could be a feature they've added. I know Always Encrypted is a big push for them because it was a great security feature. It just, I'm not going to say the word sucked, but it sucked worse than people wanted it to, or he wanted to, right? But now it's actually getting some love. So we'll see if they did that. I don't know if they did that. In order to turn that on, it does require you to turn something on in SP configure. So you don't just get it by, like, the engine's on, so you get it, and you have to turn some SP configure setting on, and then it will, and you have to do some other, you have to turn on a feature in Windows to get the enclaves to be created. So it's not just a, hey, wow, SQL just does it. There's some plumbing that you have to put in place to get it done. And then the final plumbing in SQL is the SP configure to say, I want to use enclaves. And it does. Anybody use the data classification thing in Management Studio today? So there is a feature in Management Studio today that lets you classify your data, whether it's sensitive. So GDPR stuff, think GDPR and all the people that want to make us crazy. But the current mechanism today is that you use Management Studio, you declare a piece of data or a column as sensitive, and it adds an extended property to that column. That's how they implement it. So somebody could technically come behind the scenes and drop that extended property and you're left out of the bag because it's just an extended property. There's no rhyme or reason as to how that stays there. So in this version of SQL, they've actually made a sys.sensitivity classification that lets you classify your data, and it now is a first-class citizen as metadata that stays in SQL, and you actually have to have privileges to remove it. It is not an artifact outside, so it's a first-class citizen now. You can classify the data. The classification can be anything you wish. So you can actually label it as any label, and you can then put a classification as your own classification. They have recommendations, but you're free to say, don't ever delete this data, or this is the most secret data in the world, that's your label. It's totally valid in this model.
So is it just a value pair? Or
it's a label and a...
So in order to use it, you would need to write something around that uses that? Or?
Correct. To utilize it, yes, you would need to query where this data is, this label. Yeah. So
are there any tools right now that are using it?
I believe this is actually in Management Studio 18, but I don't know anywhere else. Any other tool that has this piece. It's just a piece. So at least it's not an extended property anymore, which is nice to have an extended property, but not awesome.
I played around with it and I recall that it would go out and look at all the tables and columns and then report back to you if it was private or not.
Yeah, there is a wizard. Oh, you mean after you classify it?
No, before you.
Before, yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a wizard that will assist you in some way to do that.
Yeah.
Like if you've named a credit card number or CC, or it does kind of give you a little heads up on like, hey, here's where you could be exposed. But, and I'm sure before it releases it might get better, or if they release 18.1, I'm sure there's better things. But it's cool. I just like that it's a first-class system. And the last thing is static data masking. Anybody of you have done dynamic data masking knows that it wasn't as awesome as we'd like to think it was. You could circumvent dynamic data masking by joining a table. And it would unmask the data. Feature. It's not always awesome, but it was at least a start. They got people wanting to use it, so they had enough juice to create this guy. So now static data masking is in SSMS, and you can statically mask a piece of data for what you want. So I haven't done a ton with it, but it is a new feature that they've allowed in SSMS that lets you statically data mask, not dynamic. So that's kind of cool. The biggest piece is administration and programmability, so this is where we're going to spend most of our time. So the first administration maintenance feature that's going to be really, really freaking cool is resumable online rebuilds. So those of you who have Enterprise Edition and do online rebuilds or online builds, you now can pause them and wait for another day or another hour or another better time, and then resume that online index operation, and it will actually resume the rebuild. Same thing with resumable create index. You can actually begin to create an index, pause the little buddy, and then come back on a better time and resume that index creation. Now the cost of those guys are disk space of where it got to. So think about log, right? When you rebuild an index, what happens? It logs the rebuild, right? That's what it does, so you can roll it back. If you're in the middle of a rebuild and you're online, there's log, right? It'll store that as disk, and it will let you still truncate the log and do all the things. It just won't do anything with that data. And so that stays there, and it just is there until you finish or roll back. Right? If you kill it, that's fine. If you pause it and resume it, it will pick up where it left off, and the cost is distance. So you can pick whether that's a feature you love or you hate, but there are times when it just, IO's killer, tons of imports are happening, you want to wait, pause it. So it's a DBCC command, I think it's a DBCC command now, or maybe it's an alter, I can't remember how they landed on it, but we'll see how that goes. And online create a column store, that's another thing that was missing in the online state. You could online rebuild database tables that had data in them, but not if it had log. I believe they removed that, but the online create a column store was not possible. So if you said create column store or clustered column store, you couldn't online that. You had to offline it, which means that as long as you were doing that, it would block. So now you can online create column store, which is pretty. They've also added features to column store to allow log columns now and to do more things with column store. So you do have a lot more luxury in the new engine of this guy. These options can be made default, so they are options that are turned onable and off in database scope configurations. So if you want them to be allowed, you can turn that on in database scope configuration, and then you can do it. If you turn it off, it is not available. So it's kind of one of those control knobs that you get to do as a DBA and say, no, you can't. Yes, you can. This is one of the ones I'm waiting for. I can't wait to have it. It's the accelerated database recovery. So those of you familiar with the version store, anybody not familiar with the version store in SQL? So there's a version store in SQL for read committed snapshot isolation. So by default, the default isolation level in SQL is read committed, which means that if you were to modify a table, you were inserting rows, it would block every select. So it has 3 out of 4. There's 4 ways to do things in SQL: select, insert, update, delete, right? So write and read. In read committed, the readers won't block readers. That's it. Everything else is blocked. So writers will block readers, readers will block writers, and writers will block writers in read committed, which is the default isolation. You can turn on read committed snapshot isolation, which means that readers won't block readers, writers won't block readers, readers won't block writers, and writers will block writers. So you get 1 that you only block, and you get 2 freed up. So you have now 3 of 4 that you get. The penalty or the tax you pay for that is you end up with a version store. So if I'm writing data to a table, and I come in and read that data, it takes the version that was there at the beginning of the transaction, puts it in the version store in TempDB, and it reads from that. If you have a monster table, and you're writing data into that table, and you select, and it scans that table, you're going to get all the versions lumped into TempDB, and that's the penalty, that's the tax you pay. So instead, in advanced accelerated database recovery, what happens is that version store in TempDB, if you turn this on, it automatically persists the version store in your user database.
As opposed to temp
as opposed
DB.
to temp DB. So now you've freed temp DB from its prison, and you've moved the prison to your
Your user.
database for log backups and for all the stuff that you do, right? If you're full. Yeah, right, exactly. But here's the benefit you get for paying taxes. So you pay a tax in your current database, but here's the benefit. So when you turn on an accelerated database recovery, what happens is the versions are now stored in the current user database, which means if I have a billion rows and I say delete from table, and it starts whacking the rows, after about 6 to 10 minutes, you have about 100 gig potentially of log, and it will take, at that 6-minute delete, it isn't done, you kill it, you'll probably have a good 2-3 hours of rollback before that table's available to anybody to do anything. In accelerated database recovery, what happens is it just changes pointers. It says, remember the transaction? Remember the version store right here I just kept? That data is now that. And it just, whoop, done, and it kills. And it just gets rid of the old, and the new is now pointed to the version store and all this stuff. So the other benefit in this is that not only kills are faster, but if you determine that you killed this thing after an hour, and you said, oh man, the only way I'm going to get out of this is to really kill it. I'm going to stop SQL and start it again, because that will make it better. And so after you get fired and you leave the job, what happens is the database is unrecovered because it has to roll back before it recovers. And so you end up with an inaccessible database for however many hours that you roll back.
I've done that.
So, I'm the king of production.
Production, yeah.
I'm the king of production. It's like, this is the only option. It was bad. But, I mean, it was faster, but faster is a relative term. I mean, for a customer on a SaaS platform, and you're going to say it's okay, you're down for 3 hours, they're going to go, what planet are you on? I'm like, it's better for me?
Yeah, I'm taking this one.
Yeah. So this also does it for recovery. So say I stop SQL and I restart the SQL, it would come up and the database would be online immediately, which is change the pointers and it's up. So
I've had that question asked of me and had that question myself. This has been running an hour and it's bad. Things are really bad right now. Do I kill it or do I not?
So
you know, and this makes it a lot easier because you sit there, you look at an hour and you're like, I don't know, if it only needs another 5 minutes, then I ought to let it run. But if I kill it, I could be here all night.
Yep. So I think I'm creating a presentation just about that exact thing because we've been dealing with it at work for certain reasons. Of when do I kill it?
And they'll come in and say, hey, this is going.
Whether I should kill it. And there's actually stuff in the metadata in the sysdms that will give you a clue that you probably should not do that.
With this or
No,
before this?
Before this.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So I was going to create a presentation because it's all about log and some DMEs.
I would like that.
There's a lot of stuff.
Because that's a question that's been hard to answer. Okay, cool.
Just say July's presentation.
I've become intimately familiar with this piece of SQL because I had to.
So it seems like there should be like a stored procedure that you call that says which is faster, to kill it or let it finish.
Right.
And then you just say, perhaps kill this.
Perhaps I should just lay low, right?
And so you call in and it says the best course of action is to not kill it or whatever.
Yeah. You would think that would be a great like compression savings. Like give me a should I kill or should I not procedure, right?
It has a static one at the bottom. You run the struct procedure, it says update resume.
Yeah. RGE, right? Resume generating event.
Yes.
So accelerated database recovery, I'm super excited about. I do get the ramification, but the way you can tell if you ever want to know whether you care about the persistent version store, because some people do. Some people absolutely like go crazy, like I never turn on RCSI. Never! Because my TechDB will still berserk. And they may be right with the workload. So there is a sysdm, I know I forget it, sysdm tran version store just do a search for DMVs that have version store, and it will tell you the size of your version store. And I believe it actually will cut it out by database. But monitor that. There's actually, I think there's a perf counter as well. That you can monitor that, the size of your version store. You just monitor that over a month and see how big your version store gets before you turn off RCSI. Just don't panic, but most people panic and it all goes back after the day. And they just go, I can't deal with that. It's like, okay, you're right. That way you know how big your version store is going to be and whether or not you want that feature available to your database. I personally turn on RCSI everywhere I go, and I deal with the MDB by changing things in stock. So it's a process, it's not an event. So the next thing for application or administration maintenance is that now in 2019 they're going to allow system databases in availability. Now I'm not sure how big a deal it is to everybody that runs availability groups, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm hunching from what they say that it is all about MSDB jobs.
What's an availability group?
So availability group is basically think of, you know what mirroring is? Mirroring the database. Yeah, so basically an availability group is, the structure is, you have a Windows cluster, which will be abolished in this version as well. You won't have to have a cluster, but today you do. It basically has, you're familiar with clustering? Where you cluster two machines? Yeah, so you have two machines, and you cluster them, and then you put SQL on one, SQL on the other, and you can have a database in an availability group that lets you fail a group of databases back and forth. So that if this node goes defunct, you can fail the group of databases over as a group, and you can leave databases out as well. So it's just basically a group of databases that are mirror/available by failover, and they are not allowed today to have system databases in them. You can only have user databases. So when you do that, these are typically not read-only. They're not readable. But if I fail these over, it recovers these and makes this the secondary. Now I don't have my jobs that run here. I have to make sure I sync my jobs so that they run now on this node instead of this node. So the MSDB is where the jobs are held. And so if I had an availability group with an MSDB database in it, then my jobs would be in both places. One's readable, one's writable. One's readable, one's writable. So now I get the luxury of maybe having my jobs auto-synced. If I create it here, it's going to get over here. So that's the feature. Whether everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon and say I'm going to use it, I don't know. We'll see how the jury finds. But
If you have multiple availability groups in your system, so like you have, maybe you have 3 systems in your availability group, 2 of them are primary, and then you have one that's going to be the failover. You can't sync both MSDBs, right?
you will never be able to have.
No. If you have 3 systems and you've got 2 sets of availability groups and you're trying to save a little bit on hardware, so you've got one of them that's a failover for both, but they can fail over to any of the 3, but they always fail over to the one that's not handling anything. So as long as 2 of them don't go down at the same time, you're okay. But you can't have the jobs there, or if you've got a system where they're going back and forth and you've got some jobs on one, some jobs on another, but you want the databases that are there backed up, but not the ones that are part of the availability groups. You have jobs that should exist only on that system, but not on the other.
That's the kick in the head.
That's okay.
That's the design, that's the architect.
So bring it home.
Yeah, so you have to decide whether that's a good model for you.
Okay.
To add MSDB to the.
So this would be for 100% failover.
Yeah, this is completely on DR, I'm blah, I'm not doing anything on this guy, I'm just waiting.
Okay.
And it's a perfect scenario where they don't have to do extra work to sync.
Nice for people who are running standard, because you could just...
I don't think it'll work on standard because you can only do one database.
Yeah, but you just do that for all your databases, all in one availability group. When it goes down, they all move over.
I guess. So anyway, cool feature.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
see who uses it. I'm sure they'll get the telemetry back and determine whether anyone cares. But it is something people have asked for, and they listened, and they put it in. So we'll see what that means, how big a deal that is to people. This is another big one I'm waiting for, in-memory objects for TempDB system tables. So we all know about the problem that with TempDB where contention happens, right?
Yep.
And it just sucks rocks with creating and all these things that I can't create a table while someone else is creating a table. And if I just select it to, I'm held up until that finishes and I can then create my object. They are now putting all of the system tables of TempDB in memory LTP. So no locks, no locks. And when they ran a demo, Bob Ward ran a demo at Intersections last year, and it was amazing. Speed-wise, it was absolutely, hands down, beat the crap out of anything you'd ever do on a high-performance system, just by turning that on. So if you use TempDB objects, which our company does a ton, more than it probably should, but now it's in memory, so there's no locks, no blocks, it can manage all that crap. And so it's kind of slick. But they really, I'm hoping that one day they get to the point where memory is cheap enough in people's minds that they put the system tables of a user database in memory. Not that it matters much, because you shouldn't be creating tables all over the place, but it would just be interesting to see if it was just the first class system across the platform. But right now, TempDB was a target because people, when they did crashes and they did studies, that was the bottleneck. People just hated it. TempDB just sucked, and the workloads just bogged down. And now it won't do that. So that's pretty cool. I left a slide in there. That's terrible. Admin 2 is the hybrid buffer pool. So those of you who have companies willing to spend money and you don't use VMs, there is a feature coming called hybrid buffer pool where they are allowed to use persistent memory devices in servers and use that as buffer pool. So they're super fast, not as fast as RAM, obviously RAM's way faster because it doesn't have the bottleneck of the bus, an extra bus. It's tied right to the main computer hub in your system. But the persistent memory is now, will be allowed now to have buffer pools stored on it and gain from reading it from disk. So if you wanted to have RAM of 768 gig and then you wanted a persistent memory device of a terabyte, and now you have more RAM, essentially. It will have to manage it. Hopefully you guys don't remember buffer pool extensions. It's probably out of your mind. You should just forget that. It's not the feature you're looking for. Just forget it. This is not that. So don't get confused. People all, oh, no, that's buffer pool extensions on steroids, right? It's like, stop talking. It's not even close. The mechanism is not even close. This is actually part of the engine. That it just gets to use persistent memory. So it's a beautiful feature that high-end people that who are willing to pay money and use physical hardware on VMs will be able to use. So it's a great feature. All right, programmability. This is the other feature I'm waiting for. And that is intelligent query processing. Anybody heard about adaptive query processing? So that's a really cool thing where today, we'll talk about batch mode in a minute. Today, the query plan is baked when you start, right? You go and execute a query and base a query plan and you get a query plan. And if you parameter snip, dang it, you hate life, and you somehow evict the plan, you find it in query store or whatever you do. This will actually, I mean, this says intelligent query processing, so it covers that. I just didn't put adaptive on here, which I should have. But adaptive query processing can actually change the plan mid-execution. Holy cow. I said in the beginning that you should use a hash match. I found out that I really shouldn't. I'm going to change it to a nested loop. Bam! Nested loop the rest of the way. And it just does it on the fly. All of that is reported in the query plan now. So that's even cooler. So you can actually go mine the query cache, and you can actually find out where this happened and what took place. They've got a lot. Anybody opened up a query plan lately and seen extra stuff? It actually tells you the statistics it entertained, and this is the coolest part. In that query plan, it says statistics used. In the line item, it tells you what percentage the sample was for that statistic. It's like, sweet! So now you can go and look and say, this query ran, and these are the statistics it entertained, and there was one that was 100%, that's full scan, one that was 2%, one that was 1%, one that was 50%. You're like, who looks at that? I mean, you can see it, it's in the DMD, but I don't remember looking at that to see that statistic, but I'm now aware that it's there. So the query plan has been significantly enhanced to show things. I will tell you the caveat that the graphical show plan that you see in Management Studio, where you execute, you see the plan. Just be aware that you will want to stay ahead of the game and be on the later versions of Management Studio, because that's where the graphic show plan will show new things you wouldn't see in the old one. They're in the XML, but you won't see them. And so you'll have to go into the XML to see them, and that's not very graphical. So if you want to see them in your graphical show plan, make sure you use the later versions of Management Studio, at least 18 and above, because 18 is targeted towards SQL 19. So just be
Or Century One Plan Explorer.
Or Plan Explorer is also the same, it's ahead of the game as far as making sure you can see more than Management Studio. So if you do Plan Explorer, it's free, use that. That's a great tool as well to get more details about what's actually going on, rather than having to mine the XML. So we'll go into intelligent query processing, batch mode over row store. So right now we have batch mode over column store, and that's really cool because it's super fast. Now they've actually enhanced the intelligent query processing to allow batch mode over row store. Row store just is your table. It's a heap or an index table. It's not column stored, it's row stored. And so they now allow batch mode over row store. So it processes 900 rows at a time instead of one. So that's a 900 times savings of speed or whatever. Not speed in the microseconds or milliseconds, but the fact that it did 900 at a time instead of one is a great factor of getting a query to move a little faster through the pipeline. So that's a cool thing. Table variable, finally. So table variable deferred compilation. Now I'll give you a little caveat that I added this first execution only. When the query plan comes in and you've executed your stored problem the first time and you use the table variable in that stored problem, it will actually defer the compilation to not when you execute to create proc, because that's when it does it now. And you know the estimate on the table variable, right? Today, one row, right? Terrible deal, unless you do option recompile or some other thing. So on first execution, if you're decently consistent with TVPs or whatever you do with table variables, it will actually defer the compilation to after you do create procedure or alter procedure until it executes the first time. It'll get the estimate of what's in that table variable then, and that will be the query. So if you wildly vary in table variables, one times 50,000, one times 10,000, don't use table variables. This won't help you at all. It'll only help on the first execution. So, but if you're consistent, you're using TVPs or something else that gets used once, and you just use it, then this is a fantastic feature.
You mean when it gets loaded once?
When it gets, yes, when it gets, after it gets loaded and used, right? So you can load it, but when you use it in a join, you use it in a select, it says one row. Now it doesn't. Now it will take that compilation and say, oh, so you have 1,000 rows. Good. We're going to use 1,000 from here on for that query. So, and if you recompile, you reset the clock, right? Just like we recompile the program. So you reset the clock. So cool. Not like the silver bullet at all, but certainly great help, right? Approximate count distinct. Anybody ever see select count distinct ID? And you're like, are you kidding me?
I know.
Like, really? There was no other way to do that? Like, really? It's a thing. So, and I'm not saying it bad about anybody that uses it. It's just, there's better ways.
Yeah, much better.
So, in light of people using it a lot, and they really, honestly, most people don't care. They're only using it to see how dense their table is. That's all. I mean, they really don't use it for anything real. I know, it scares me. I check my words every time I say them, then I don't care. Because I know what happens. The approximate count distinct is a new function, like count, that will actually use statistics to go say, how distinct is this column? And it will use statistics and go out and give you an approximate count. I've heard that sometimes, in some cases, it actually takes longer than count distinct, but it is a bucket load friendlier. Because imagine what count distinct does. What does it do? It scans that column, right? If you don't have an index, it scans the table. So is that a good thing? It's never a good thing. So, but it does.
Unless you have both records.
What's that?
Unless you have both records.
Right, if you have both records, you're good. So the approximate count distinct doesn't scan the table. It looks at the statistics history rate. So as that gets better and better and better with new engines, you get a more closer approximate
Why would that
or
ever
it
be
is
slower?
scanned.
Why would that ever be slower? You were saying that it's sometimes, I mean, it can't
I really
measure.
don't know. I heard it from Aaron Bertrand, and he lives in Century One, and I trust maybe a little too easy. But he said he did tests on his side of things, and there were some cases where it was slower.
Wow.
I'm not sure why, but it was. It was just less resource intensive for whatever reason. So anyway, the approximate count distinct is now a new function you can use. This is another one I'm waiting for. So scalar UDF inlining. Everybody loves scalar UDFs, right? Because they perform awesome when you don't inline them.
They don't take up, according to my query plan, they don't take up any resources at all.
Exactly. Yeah, beautiful.
They're awesome.
It's just not there. It's like files. Can't be the inline UDF, the non-inline UDF, right?
It's always
there.
It's always somewhere
It's
else.
gone. You're like, sweet. They now inline automatically, so if you have a multi-statement UDF, the scalar, it will actually auto-inline them and make them part of the query outside. So they'll push them out to the outer query and use them, and you'll get to see them in the query plan. It's a beautiful thing.
I still wonder how it can do that.
Oh, it's amazing. I don't know how they did it, but watching it, it was like magic happened here, and you're like,
I mean, it still have to process individual rows. And
I had no idea. So it's cool. It's really cool that they did a test, or they did a demo and showed it, and it does. It's amazing. The speed difference is staggering. So I'll take it. And rather than going and refactoring all those blank UDFs that are scalar to get to be returned, and forget it, and just inline me. I'm good. Just do it. It's all happy. It's all happy. So this just folds the UDF logic into the outer plan so you can see it, as well as the speed increases. So that's cool. The next thing, anybody know about lightweight profiling? Anybody use it today? There's a feature that you can turn on in Management Studio to do a lightweight profile. Basically, the data is already there in extended events. That's what lightweight profiling is. It's a little lighter than lightweight profiling, but it's the same thing. It's always there and available. You just have to turn it on to see it. In 2019, they're going to make it default on. So you, at any time you want, you could go pull the data of an already running execution plan and see it walk through the whole thing. You can just watch it go, which is cool. But it's on by default. It used to be that you today, or 2017, you had to turn on trace flag for 7412, and it turns it on for all sessions. You couldn't turn it on for just one or two. It was you all or nothing with the trace flag. They now turn it on by default, and you can turn it off if you want to with the database scope configuration. So if you want to do that, you can turn it off if you wish, if you just hate it, or don't want people to use it. There's a new wait type, so if anybody who's executed a query and the engine has determined the stats are out of date, and it starts on into updating stats before it executes your query. You're invisible. It's invisible to you. You can't see it today. You don't even know that happened. Unless you happen to catch, if you know an SB goes active, you see Statman. You're like, I caught it. I've caught it once or twice in the last 6 months, and went, dang it. But it was a huge table, so I get it. This now adds a wait type for Statman. It's called sync stats. And you can see that it was waiting on sync stats. So if you see that wait type a lot, you now know that you have stats that get out of date enough that when it just goes nuts and you have to wait for it. If you ever see, they've added as a wait type, so it will show up in your sysdm exec requests as a wait type that's waiting, as well as having it accumulate as a wait type. So this double duty. You get to see it in requests, and you also get to see it as a wait type accumulating, just like you do CX Packet and the CX Consumer, which is a new one in 2017, or 2016 that you can see. Cool thing, at least you'll have more visibility into what's actually taking place with your query. UTF-8 support, that was a big honking thing that people really loved. Today we believe that Unicode is UTF-8, which it is. But there was really nothing about UTF-8. If you imported a UTF-8 file and it actually had UTF-8 characters in it, they just got stuck in a Unicode data type. And you could not put a Unicode data, in a bar chart column, even though in some cases it's valid. Because you did UTF-8 import, it's a UTF-8 value, it would strip off the part of the UTF-8, put it in the bar chart, and most often SSIS won't let you do it unless you cast it or do something else. And so today, you can't do that. On 2019, they added UTF-8 support with some new UTF-8_SC collations, and you can actually collate your bar chart and have UTF-8 data live in bar chart if it's not double byte. As soon as the double byte enters the space, you should put it in a bar chart, or you'll lose the top byte. A bar chart is a 1 byte column or 1 byte character, but there are some UTF-8 characters that can live in 1 byte. And now you can actually store UTF-8 that lives in 1 byte in a bar chart. You don't have to pay the extra character tax. So it's kind of cool. But that's built into the agent. And then graph database. Graph database is being enhanced. We know that the graph database started in 2017 and it had some cool things, but they've now enhanced it to allow you to have edge and node constraints on your nodes and edges, and they'll let you also do a merge. So there's now a merge command inside, so you can merge the nodes and edges. So that's the graph database is on their list as not going away. So if you want to invest in it, you're welcome to invest in it, and it will be your friend for a long time. It won't go away. So they're completely, we talked with the PM last time I was up there, and she is super stoked about any feedback you guys can give. So if you use Graph, you're welcome to ping me and send feedback, and I'll make sure it gets to the PM. But they are heavily invested in it, so don't be afraid of that feature. There's been features in the past that have died on the vine. And this is not one of them, so I just wanted to make sure you knew that. They're looking for active feedback for those of you who like to use that kind of thing. And some of the last things in programmability is that they have added, those of you familiar with the 2017, they've added Python. So you can execute an external script in Python. It will execute Python. Most of that was centered around big data and data science. They've now added Java, so that you can execute Java inside the engine, which I don't know why you would, but data science does have Java components that actually work in data science. So they've added Java language, so you can install the Java runtime on a SQL server, and you can say execute external script, and it can be Java, and it will execute it. It's cool. I don't think it's for the masses, but I think it's with data science, we're certainly going to see more and more people execute things inside the engine. That's just how it's going to be.
So I run R on that And I'm trying to learn how that works. Boy, that's still pretty rough.
R is cool,
Yeah.
but it is heavy with learning.
Well, I'm saying the connection between SQL Server and R is still pretty dark.
Oh, yeah. So they've enhanced that, so that's one thing that's not on this list, but they've enhanced that as well, so there's goodness coming. They're heavily focused on ML and data science, and they are very invested in having it come to the engine as a internal thing that they'll use. So that, again, investment. They're really interested in these languages that make it so simple to do things that take tons of TSQL or USQL or code to do. And R just is so nice.
Yeah, okay, makes more use out of Python.
Yeah. So it just depends on what you're for.
Side note, do you know why R is so convoluted?
Oh, wait.
No, for real.
No. It's not a joke.
No.
DBA walks into the bar.
Where did R come from? Who developed R?
I don't know.
Academia.
It was right after GFail.
Academia.
Oh, right, yeah.
No, R, if anything, R is a knockoff of S, right? So you had SAS, and you had S, and S plus, and then you had R. Academia developed R. So as you can imagine, if you remember back to your academia days, the amount of consistency between places, and that is shown in the programming language that came out of academia. It was R. Everything is convoluted. There's 10 ways to do any one thing because everybody's working on a master's project, and they develop it in R and they publish it, and there's their project. So there's 10 different ways to do whatever you want to do statistically. Each one is slightly different because they have slightly different needs.
And they put in everything possible, including the Jason saying.
Well,
Right. Well, because someone needed a kitchen sink with a slightly different patina on it.
right.
So they wrote it because that's what they needed. Because academia is all about very specific things, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with stats.
So what pirates wrote R?
So what you get out of R is everything you could possibly want if you go find it and put it on.
Yeah.
Because it's all out there somewhere. The bucket that you can pull out of R is just amazing, the amount of stuff that's there. And you get a lot of people that know it because they learn it in school. They come out of school and they know R. And that's why Python, written by programmers, not by academia, not by statisticians, written by programmers, has better programming standards enforced in it, but it doesn't have all the rainbow that you get from R.
Interesting.
I think too, also that the R is more set-based as opposed to procedural.
Yeah, everything is a
Python
set.
is.
Everything is a
And
set.
so that's why it also adds to the complexity of it.
Yeah, I haven't done anything with R. I was only exposed to it on SQL Cruise like some years ago. Bob Moody came on the Cruise and he did a presentation on R. And I'm like,
My statistical background comes from academia. That was my undergrad.
Interesting.
So I gravitated towards R because that's how I knew what to do. That's where I got all of my background. So
Yeah, he showed us a statistical model and then ran one command and got a complete regression going. That's how it is. I'm like, shut up. I mean, that's crazy, but I would never be able to repeat what he did, but it was really impressive to see it. I just don't know what he had to do to get to that point. So I mean, it was impressive for eye candy. Like, oh wow, that was amazing. But I really don't know much about it. So, but languages seem to be on SQL Server team's list. They want to let you not have to be so stuck with just TSQL or to do hocus pocus to get an execution of R or Python. It's on the list. Java just happens to be on this releases list.
So I've found it easier to use ODBC rather than going through the way that you would normally do it in SQL to get the data out. And it's frustrating to me, moving data back and forth between the two. I just was hoping that you would have some kind of great news.
Yeah, awesome news for this. Yeah, all I know is that that they completely embraced the principle of artificial intelligence, ML, and data science. That they're heavily invested in making that world easier tied to data.
Yeah.
Because data is important in that front. So we'll see how far they go and how many releases it takes to fully get awesome. But right now, they're fixing bugs all over the place with Python to make sure it runs in every flavor. It's just cool. So Java and Python are here to stay and they're going to be part of the engine.
Can't wait for COBOL.
We made a joke to the team, like, so when you go off, you'd have thought we just called him Mother Ever. It was not a good thing. Like, wow, COBOL, dude. Yeah, those were the days way back when I
What about Fortran?
I
That's
think
older.
we never touched Fortran.
I unfortunately didn't.
I did COBOL and I was like amazed that my program worked at the end, and then that I didn't ever have to worry about that again, so I didn't want to write anything in
I
that.
started to
Because the
learn
data
COBOL
structure
and
was
said this is stupid and went back to Fortran.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
some people never learn.
COBOL is like writing an English essay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it is. Very Englishised, right? It's like, please spell out everything. And the last thing in programmability is the idea. So how many of you ever tried to insert a column or data into a column and it comes back and says, hey, string or binary data will be truncated? Yeah, sucks. And it really wasn't helpful because you didn't know what the value was that was truncated. You didn't know the row. You didn't know squat. You just knew that it just didn't work. And you should know better.
It's kind of like saying, it broke.
Yeah.
It don't work.
Like, okay. And so they've been under scrutiny by a lot of people. Marilyn Summerscott would not let it go, and he just kept them batting over the head. And now they've added a feature, and I wish they would turn it on by default, but there are enough people who complained that it was breaking change, and that one version needed to be in the middle of the breaking change, because people will programmatically look for the string of binary data will be truncated and they can act on it. And so now that they changed the string to include more data about what you screwed up on or what the query tried to do, it couldn't, that would mess up people's code. It's like the select data version, and when they changed it to do more, people just had a cow because they had programmed this tool to go and read the ANA versions of each instance, and they knew how to parse it. And then SQL changed it, and they just had to hold it.
I just don't
And
get
we're
it.
not, so.
People want things fixed, they want things changed,
Right.
but they want it to be the same as it was.
Right. It's like the 4199, right? So all the optimizer fixes under trace flag 4199, it was off by default in version 2014. You had to turn it on to get it. 2016, they controlled it with a trace flag. A compatibility level. And now it's in 2016 and above, it's now a database scope configuration. But in the current model, you get it,
into it.
and then anything after that, you get to opt in until they release a CPU. So it's cool. But this is new functionality, so if you want it in 2019, you do have to turn on the trace flag globally, and then it will give you the new message. It's trivial, right? You set up and start it, and you walk away. You want to work on it. But that's the only thing that trace flag turns on, is that feature, to see string or binary truncated when you want to. So I'll try to do a demo here now that I got 2019 installed to show you that feature. And I think that's it. Wow, we're a little early now. We'll see how long the demo's take.
Can I make a comment? Right?
Yeah.
Tell me if you agree with this or if I'm way off base. It seems like, as I'm looking at all of the things they're offering in 2019, it's more geared towards larger customers who are well established and we want to keep you for a long time, as opposed to smaller customers who may be new or newer customers.
So I
The money
will
is-
agree in a little bit that the grease on the skids is enterprise. And that's the grease. That's what pays the bills. You build an enterprise product that's supposed to handle bazillions of things. And you pay for it. It's an enterprise product, you have to get enterprise features, you get encryption, you get compression, you get some things that you wouldn't normally get in other things. They threw a bone in 2016 at SP1, right? They gave developers access to things that they never had access to, but only development features. Now security features not, so they still kept their bar up on enterprise. On the small companies, you will find that there's very much disdain in the small company realm that they have to buy standard, but in a polished workgroup edition.
They use a different product if they're that small.
Yeah, so they'll either use Express until it dies, right, until it can't run anymore because of their size, or I've had customers actually have a regular delete that happens in the database to keep it under the 10 gig limit. And I'm just like, well, okay, but it's possible. But yes, I don't believe that they really have a small guy in mind, honestly, because if you're going to build it for a small guy, an enterprise guy is going to crush it. And so they develop it for enterprise, and the small guy has to buy it. It's almost a bad tax that you end up paying, but.
And it seems like it's also geared towards established.
I need to go to my
And I'm not seeing anything that's going to pull anybody from any other.
Yeah, that could be true. I don't think that that's a type of focus of theirs, but I would agree that could be seen as.
Emergency at work, I'm sorry.
That's what
Well,
failed.
Just text
We gotta get together then.
Yeah, we do. Let's call it tomorrow morning or something.
Okay, we should talk.
Just press the failover button and come back.
Push the panic button. So this is what's new in the preview release notes, and it does pertain to 2.5, I believe it says somewhere in here. Somewhere, right here. And it says, updated compiler. So they built an updated compiler, so that's a good thing. There was a known issue with floating points, so that's a feature I didn't say anything about. Them updating the compiler that will compile things. A lot of the compiler is in two forms, right? One, so in-memory LTP compiles it into C, so that's a compiler, and then they compile it for the SQL. So they've had issues with floating point and other conversions, so that's a good thing that they've updated it. That'll be obviously out in the other versions. UTF-8 collations we talked about, SQL graph we talked about, always encrypted, system dynamic management views. There is a new DMV that they're fixing, but it is sysdm objects disable on compatibility level change that will give you an idea that if you change the compat level of the database, what's going to be disabled. It's kind of cool. We haven't never had that, ever. And then they made some integration services changes to allow it to run on Linux. So that's for those Linux people, that's good. Let's see what's new. Those were the release notes. That's just telling you that there are still issues with CTP 2.5, just so you know. So let's see, big data clusters, they're doing command line things. We didn't really talk about what they are, I mean, really much. Poly based on Linux is a new feature. Java language SDK for SQL. The DM exec query plan stats expanded the scope of the plans available in the DM app. There is a last query plan stats scoped operation in database that lets you see the last query plan stats instead of just the basic ones. There's spatial reference identifiers. I've never done anything with that, but anybody does geography type data types, it's cool. Big data clusters again, truncation error message to include column names and truncated value. That's what we have. This verbose truncation warnings, I think, is supposed to be a database scoped configuration value. So remember how I said there were 17 new ones? This is one of them that you can actually say I want them by database rather than the full Monty thing. Query post execution plan profile. Right now, all you can get is an actual, but it's really not an actual, right? Everybody knows that you don't actually get the actual. You get what it said, and it said after it executed that it was the actual. It's really not the actual. This will actually get you an actual plan, what actually executed, not just what was stored. So that's kind of cool. It does say extended event collects the equivalent of an actual execution plan based on lightweight profiling, unlike the query post execution show plan, which is the extended event. You get more information in the plan profile. So that's kind of cool. And then transparent data encryption scan, there is a suspend and a resume now. Instead of just going, well, I started it, it's just keeping on going. Now you can actually stop and resume that if you wish to, for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, I haven't thought about it enough to know why I would do that, but it's a kind of a cool feature. And then SSAS, I don't do much with that, so many relationships and tabular data models, which is nice. Property settings for resource governance. Anybody use resource governor? So resource governor is a cool feature. Yeah, it's a cool feature. Most people just forget that it's there and don't use it, but it's really actually kind of a nice feature, especially for DBCC until they fix DBCC. I have not heard anything about DBCC being fixed. This is big data clusters again. New feature, enable accelerated database recovery can be enabled per database. So remember when I said that accelerated database is available, it used to be on by default when the first CTP, but now you can actually control the by database. It's a database scope configuration. You can turn it on for that database and off for that database, if you wish to. Reduce recompilations for workloads using temporary tables across multiple scopes. So remember how when you create a table in temp. Wow, I'm still not talking. You create a temporary table in a stored procedure and then you drop it, and it used to always cause recompiles, right? So they're getting smarter, so that it doesn't always cause recompiles across scopes. So you may get away with drops. If I always remove them just as a matter of course because you shouldn't have them in there because you lose temp table caching if you do that. And so, because you modify the table afterwards. So I usually take them out anyway, but if you have drops in there, which we found some every once in a while that do have drops, this will reduce the recompilations. It won't help me with table caching, but it will at least keep it from getting recompository time in executes. Improved indirect checkpoint. Anybody use indirect checkpoint? Know what that is? In 2016 and above, they enabled this flag called target recovery time. If you right click on the database view properties and go into options, there's target recovery time. By default, it's 0. If you've ever watched performance counters on log flushes and CPU, and you leave it at 0 in 2016, you'll notice that you'll see lines like this. And if you have multiple databases, you'll see it happen for every database. So now CPU's just getting pummeled every time because the lazy writer has to wake up and check what they log. In this guy, in 2016 above, they have it, but they've improved the scalability. So what this target recovery time feature is you can set the target recovery time saying how many seconds you want the database to be available on restart. So the engine will go, based on your activity in this database, I can only have this much log undone to be able to recover it in this many seconds. So the default you put on is typically 60 seconds. So you put 60 on, and now you get this in the performance monitor instead of this. And so it just levels it out. And across all databases. It's really cool. So you get less CPU spikes, you get less hassle about that. So this is just improving the scalability in 2019 to make it more scalable for larger databases or larger workloads. So it's kind of a cool feature. Then UTF-8 support we talked about. D-line, cascaded delete actions. Anybody love cascade deletes? Yeah, we just and enable or disable lightweight query profiling with a new database scope. So they've enabled it. It's on by default, but they put it as a database scope configuration, like I said. You can turn it on or off like you wish. Anybody use Azure Data Studio? So Azure Data Studio, is that a scoff? No? Or is that just no, I can't use it?
We can't use half the stuff.
So Azure Data Studio replaces the Operations Studio. So you've already heard about the SQL Operations Studio. It was written to be able to cross-plat, and now they've replaced Operation Studio completely and renamed it as Azure Data Studio. It is a sister tool, not a replacement tool for SSMS, but it follows the mantra of VS Code. So VS Code is this super good, free, cross-plat editor of lots of things. The one thing Azure Data Studio did not support was Active Directory. Azure Active Directory. It supported Azure Directory, but it did not support the ability to use Azure Active Directory to get to an instance. Now they've incorporated that into Azure Data Studio and let you now have access to Azure Active Directory through that UI. If only we had that in all tools like SQL CMD and other things like PowerShell. It's really great! But it's on their list, so we get it. But these tools got more love. That's how it's. And added a new wizard notebook. Anybody use notebooks? Anybody heard of Jupyter notebooks?
Yes.
These are T-SQL notebooks in Azure Data Studio. It is freaking cool. Yeah, I'll pull it up here in a minute and show you. But it basically, if you're familiar with Jupyter notebooks, how many of you don't know what notebooks are? Okay, so notebooks are a way to mix commentary, T-SQL, and results in a file. So if I had T-SQL, and I said select column name from blah, where blah, and I said execute, and it put the results in here. Now, if I wanted someone to see what I see, I can commentate in the text. I can, with markup, so there's an ML markup thing that's done for notebooks, notebook ML that people have written, and they conform pretty heavily to that ML, so you can actually prettify it and do things. But then you have a box with a query, and you can put whatever query you want, however crazy code you want, and then if you execute it, they'll put results in there, and that result is persistent in that notebook. So you can go down this story of like, this is what I experienced, blah, 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 and have as big a notebook as you want. You save it, and that notebook is a file. You can compress it and send it to somebody, and they open up, the data's there. They can see it, they can see the query you ran, they can see the whatever, it's all in that notebook.
What does that execute use?
SQL.
I mean,
No, what's a reader for the notebook?
What do you mean?
I mean, it's
No, Azure
Notepad.
Data Studio. Sorry,
Oh,
it's an
sorry.
Azure Data Studio.
You
so you
open
have
it
to
in
have
and
an Azure account in order to make it.
Nope, Azure Data Studio. It's the tool. Like SSMS, except, no,
Yeah.
it's VS Code, except for Azure Data Studio. So it can connect to Azure or not, but it's a tool. It's like
And they'll
SSMS.
just
So you
mark
don't have to connect to a database or anything of that nature.
Not necessarily.
Application data in there.
If you want results, you probably should.
But if you've already run it and then you send it to someone, it's got the text of the query and the results of that query
Okay.
persisted.
Or you can
So-
actually save the notebook and say, don't put the results in there, and it will straight. So it's kind of cool. And that was actually ready in March. They did a demo of it and showed it to us and released it the next day. And I used it to create a presentation for T-SQL stuff for SQL Saturdays at 10. And it actually worked pretty well. I was pretty amazed that it actually, so I could go demo something without a connection to SQL. Because you just have the results sets in my notebook. So,
Oh, so you didn't actually execute it? It's
yeah, it just was there. It was really kind of cool. But notebooks are here to stay. Jupyter made sure of that. The Python that's the way to do things.
That's why I'm using it.
Yeah, Python is the way to do things like that in notebooks. That's the way to do it. And Jupyter was the big guy that made it possible. And so now T-SQL notebooks are in Azure Data Studio. So that's a feature. And they've improved. I mean, they've obviously, notebooks are new. And so you're going to see a lot more tweaks and stuff where T-SQL notebooks can be better and more transportable and blah, 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 blah. And in the future, I'm sure they're going to be more secure, right? So the data inside it is encrypted through something. I'm sure they're going to figure out some way to do that, all that stuff. And then they added in Management Studio 18, they added a way to open in Azure Data Studio. So that's kind of cool. They also have done the reverse. I believe I've seen a demo. I can't remember how they did it, but they also have in Management Studio a way to launch Azure Data Studio from Management Studio. So they kind of reciprocated both of the ways to do things in there. And then analysis services fine. And I'm probably going backwards because this is down to 2.2.1. This is UTF-8. They allow it in replication, so you for people who use replication access directory. But they now added UTF-8 to allow you to replicate it as well. And then always on availability groups in Docker containers with Kubernetes was one of the first features they put into YouTube. The other thing, there was one other, there's the wait type. So if you can't see that, that's the wait type you see in sysvm exec requests. Select stat. That's how you know it's waiting on stats sync. Just so you know, if you go after exec requests. And then this is the new wait type, wait on sync statistics refresh in sysvm also wait stats. That's what the name is. So if you ever see that, you'll know what that is. Then hybrid buffer pool was put in there as well. Static data masking, and then obviously container registry for SQL on Linux. And I think that's the main things that are on there. The one thing I was hoping to see, and I didn't see it, I'm just going to search it just because I want to see truncate. I believe that's Oracle. Maybe they haven't put it in. Maybe it's a feature that got cut. Nope, there it is right there. That's Oracle stink. My understanding, and I'll validate this for next user, but my understanding is you're going to be allowed to truncate a partition instead of swapping it out. You know, whatever. You can actually go to truncate table partition block or whatever the syntax is, and truncate an actual partition rather than having to delete from a partition or delete with it boundaries or whatever. You can just write a partition. I haven't seen it show up yet, so it may be a feature that actually was cut, and maybe they'll release it in at SC or something. But I'll validate that. So don't tell anybody I said it. Well, it's record, so it doesn't matter. So if I violated NDA, I guess I'm shot. But I haven't seen it out of line, so I just heard, maybe I just read it in Oracle Docs and thought I'd like it in SQL. So it might be that, but I don't remember anything specific that I heard, but it could be. I maybe just dreamed. It would be great to have a truncate partition. Maybe I was just dreaming one night, which is fine. Outside of that, that's all the features. We went through the things, and that's all I could see. So I'm assuming that if there's anything new, we'll see it, and we'll hope that there's new features that come. I think they're pretty late in the game, so I'm not sure how many new features they'll add, but I know that there's going to be a lot of love in Power BI and stuff like that, so they're going to use Power BI and Power BI Server. There's a lot of love coming there. They've done a lot more with SSAS. So those of you who have cubes and do SSAS, they actually are giving that a lot of love this release, which has been stagnant forever, and now it's actually going to get some juice, so that's kind of cool. So let's do this. Let me go full screen since I don't really care about that. And let's launch our Management Studio. This does have Management Studio 2018, and let me also launch, oh, you know what, I may not have it on here. If I don't have Azure Data Studio, I will launch it from my desktop or my laptop, and I'll show you. We only have a few minutes left anyway, so we'll see what happens. All right. And actually, I guess I lied. This is not GA. This is RT. This is a CTP version of, it's a release candidate of 18, but that's okay. That's not what I wanted. I wanted my other instance. My 2019, just so you can see some of the things that come out. And then I'm going to go to the query and I'll make this bigger. I don't have Zoom on this machine yet. So we'll say query results, server, and results to grid, and we will, oh, that's not what I want. I want fonts and colors there. So we'll change our fonts and colors for our grid results to not 8, because that's really great. All right, and it makes me exit out, which is fantastic. But it will run faster since I already printed it up. Maybe because it's an RC. It'll be faster. There we go. We'll go over this instance instead. databases, you might actually have to. All right, so then we'll raise that up. There we go. And we'll go into this database here. I may have to do options. Now, I want you to notice that this is the section for database scope operations or configurations. Notice there's still only 4. So don't get caught into thinking that they put all of these in the GUI. They're database scoped operations or configurations, but you do have to do TSQL to get them. They didn't really have a whole lot of GUI to let you do other things like that. So I just wanted to show you that. Here's the target recovery time thing right here. So here's your target recovery time in seconds. So you put the seconds. Like I said, by default in 2016, if you create a database, it will automatically go 60. If you migrate a database, it will leave it at 0. And you'll want to go check that. That value is in sys.databases, so you can interrogate whether that's on or off. And I would recommend, we actually had an instance that nobody did that. And we saw CPU spikes, and we were like, what the heck happened? And so we went and looked at all the instances, and sure enough, that instance did not have that set. We set it, and it just like calm the water. So I'm like, wow. So it's a pretty pointed example of what not to do. So if we go select star from sys.pm database scope operations, if I do scope, where's that? Might not even be the scope configurations. You will see that there are now 21, or no, there are 23 now. So there's 2 new ones in the CPP 2.5, so they've actually added 2 more. You can see Maxstop, you can see legacy cardinality estimation, parameter sniffing, and query optimizer hotfixes. Those are 1 through 4. Those existed in 2016 and above, so you know nothing new there. But now you have identity cache. Interesting, identities are cached. Interesting, like sequences. They're now a first-class citizen. Interleaved execution table ID function. Nice. Batch mode memory grant feedback. So if you want batch mode and feedback, the value is on, so you get that by default. So everything that's on is a 1 or on or off. I am really not sure what the dev team was smoking, because there's an off here instead of a 1 or 0.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody missed the memo and decided to put the thing. Elevate online and elevate resumable, those are based on the index things we talked about, the resumable index and stuff like that. Optimize for ad hoc workloads by database instead of by instance. That's handy. Now you don't get hosed on the little baby plans unless you want to be. So if you have a data warehouse database, you can turn it off for that one, but get the benefit for all the other datas. That's kind of handy. XTP procedure execution stats and query execution stats for main memory LTP. Row mode memory grant feedback will go into your query plan, which you get on by default. And just a couple other batch more those stores on by default. Deferred compilation, TV is on. Accelerated plan forcing. Global temporary table auto drop. Global temporary auto drop. That's interesting. Lightweight query profiling, again, on by default. Verbose truncation warnings on by default. Last query plan stats is off by default, so be aware. That's an option that is off by default, at least in this CTP it is. So the other thing I'll show you is we're going to quickly whip up so we're going to create a table that has demo table that has an ID. We'll actually just do a column name, and we'll say varchar 5, and we'll create that table. In master, of course, it's beautiful. so that's all beautiful. I mean, dev by demo is awesome. Let's just drop that table. That's terrible. Let's change to my demo DB because that's really better. So we create that guy, and then we're going to insert into DBO demo name, and we're going to do a value of then is a presenter, which is obviously bigger than 5. that database scope configuration to allow that memory, that warnings. So back in the day, it required 460. Now it's a database scope, and they left it on by default, I guess. But now it says in the database.dbo.demo, so they've gone past the point of just giving the table. Now you actually get the full 3-part name. Column is name. Truncated value is Ben is. Now I know what the value was that was truncated. Beautiful, right? So now it's awesome. And they've even done this where it's black here and red here. That's awesome. It gets a new error number, 2628. If I turn that scope configuration off, so it's called, what's that called? Verbose truncation warnings. Alter database, MODB, set scope, configuration. Oh, I knew I would do it wrong. It's probably not one word. Off.
Didn't make the word off.
It did not, oh. No, I don't think that's right. Well,
I think
anyway,
it's a 0.
I'm gonna do this. This is how you cheat.
Oh, do you have a 0 FF there?
Maybe.
No, it's a lower.
This is how you cheat.
Lowercase.
So I'm going to turn this to 1, and I'm going to script it out. Right? So I'm going to cheat. Set max stop equals 1. Set verbose truncation warnings equal 0.
Oh,
it's
yeah?
string.
Oh. No, it's dang it. Yeah, I guess I can't figure it out yet. I'm not sure why that is not part of our little scope thing. Let's see on. Let's do it on or off. Script. Yeah, so I don't know why that verbose.
Is it case sensitive? Is off case sensitive?
No,
Maybe he doesn't like the verbose truncation warnings.
I'm gathering.
Oh, there you go.
Shit.
What did you do different?
Whatever. It has to be off for some dumb reason. So
Oh,
let's
Lord.
look at it now. Let's see what it says now. Verbose truncation warnings 1. So that really helped. That didn't do anything. So let's do.
So wait a minute, what did you do different? What, if you
Oh,
got
oh,
basic,
I wanted
There
to
you
keep
go,
it
the
off.
scope configuration set instead of
I
set.
said
Why with the
equals.
capital O rather than the lowercase o?
Equals.
oh, the equals.
It said completed successfully, but obviously.
Yeah, you've got, in your other tab, you've got
You're
it
in master
set
database, does
before
that
scope
matter?
configuration.
I'm in demo DB right now, so I'm good.
But you're in master on the,
Oh, good point. Now let's go look, okay? Kudos and points to the developer over there. Let's see if it did change it. It should. If the engine has that kind of, wow, that's a bug. That's terrible. Because I should see it not work now, and it doesn't work. That's just sad. Okay, well, anyways, the scope configuration stuff. Because I don't see any trace flags. There's no trace flags that are on, so I give up on that one. Shoot, I was hoping to show that it didn't do that.
Try capital off, because I'm looking at the syntax and it looks just like what you have there.
Use MLB, successful,
But you're using an equals where you weren't before.
Yeah, because it didn't work without the equals.
and it's, oh, shut.
There you
Really?
go.
what is,
Case sensitive.
what is your database set
Case
at?
sensitive?
Is your
It's
database
case
set?
sensitive.
Oh.
God, that is so,
Are you sure?
okay, that's really dumb, but I'll
That's
accept
really
it
dumb.
because I'm a nice guy. And now it's just a stupid message, 8152. That stringer binary data is, and that was the other beat people had, is they changed the error number. It's like, well, the message number was
So maybe, yeah.
if it's an 8152, it's going to say that. It's what's going to say. And
That's
the
true.
fault.
I agree with that. That
So
one
they
does
have to
seem
make
weird
a
to
new
me.
one, and ironically, this was 8152. If you turn this scope configuration back on,
With a lowercase.
let me do it in lowercase just for kicks and giggles, so I can email them and say, what are you smoking? It's on, so I guess it accepts
On, but not off.
on and off. And
you sure it's not the equals? Am I,
Well, he's not running this statement. You need to put an equal.
I'm running this one, yeah, so. Let's see, if I said off with this.
Yeah.
And just said that with lowercase off, it comes up and says,
Right against us.
it comes up and says it's off. But if I said on,
Well, it's working now.
and then I said off with capital letters,
No, it worked. The off with lowercase letters
Yeah,
worked. It was off. It did.
Yeah.
I think you just didn't
So
rerun
the
the,
presenter is smoking.
I think when you went back here, you didn't rerun the query on the other screen.
I'm
just
just
looking at-
by demo, I'm just an idiot. That's-
Looking at stale data.
We'll go look at the recording later and figure out what happened.
And yeah, we'll see what happens, yeah, so anyway, it's a cool thing, I think that it's overdue to have it on, and to be able to see what actually failed and didn't succeed.
And we get good group, but then it's credibility.
So, yeah, exactly, my credibility, all tush.
One of the issues I see is if your data is somehow secure data, it'll show up in an error message, and if your error messages are showing to the end user, it's possible that secure data gets displayed to a end user.
Yeah, that could be true, but again, you issued the insert statement, so.
Well, but I'm saying if there's some private data, like some hidden key that failed
Maybe.
because the number got too big.
That'll happen with the syntax error too, though.
Yeah.
Syntax error near,
Yes.
see syntax error near, patient has a blah, blah, blah
Well,
problem.
I'm just saying, before it just said you had an error and it wasn't.
Decided not.
fixed.
Decided not.
There's I think this is my,
I'm just saying, it gives you more information, but you gotta be sure and hide it when it goes to the
Yeah.
user,
Yeah, that would be good practice.
which is a problem in our code. We don't hide things, we tell them everything.
so here's my Visual Studio, but I was just gonna show you a TSQL notebook, but it's kind of actually sadly.
Yeah.
I use Studio notebook too.
Is this Azure Studio?
This is Azure Data Studio, yeah.
And it's all web-based online, or is it a local
Also,
executable?
this one needs it. It's what?
Is it a local executable, or is it online web?
It's a local executable. So here's my assignment statement. This is my, so basically what I did is I put my slide deck in here, right? So this is my slide. And I used VM markup language to get my slide to look good. So I was gonna be able to go build a little bit here, and there's my T-SQLs, and then I can click this guy. And notice I have my results here. Let's see if I have it.
So you can connect that to our local instance.
Yeah.
Like your laptop.
Yeah. Let's do, there we go. So notice that my subquery return more than one value, that is the results from the execution. And it's stored there, so I opened up, I didn't execute it, it's stored there. And then I went down here and said, let's assign a column value to a variable, and here's my output, name George, and my select statement was select at name as name, so there's my name George. So, and it also does total execution time, to see how long it ran. So this has a lot of statistics that can be used to do troubleshooting and have notebooks that you can send and track. And it's really cool.
That's great for sharing with people that solve the problem.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. So you just contact the person and say, hey, you have a problem, say, hey, you run this, you send them a notebook with this stuff, run this on your instance, send it back, you have all the results and everything in your notebook, and you just open it up and you do your troubleshooting. It's really kind of cool. But notebooks are the future of portability and use and documentation and all sorts of stuff. But you don't have to have the results stored in your default account.
Text
And
file
here's your
still
kernel,
works too.
your SQL, you have PySpark, you have PySpark 3, PySpark. So let's do this. Yeah, SQL, PySpark 3, PySpark, Spark, Scala, Spark R, and Python 3. So there's a lot of notebook types that Azure Data Studio supports. So kind of cool.
And it's free.
And it's free.
Okay.
So that's it. Hopefully it was helpful and useful, and you'll go buy 2019 now. I wish I
Thank you,
got-
Ben. We appreciate your time putting it together and bringing this to us today.
Thank you.